everybody, Mike Iaconelli here. Welcome to a brand new In the Shop. And in this week's shop, we're going to be talking about my 4 top baits for the month of September. 4 top baits for the month of September. Before we get into the baits, let me remind you, the way we're going to break it down, we're going to give you 2 from the Mason-Dixon line north, so Midwest, Northeast, and we're going to give you 2 for the southern part of the country. Let's say Virginia South, okay? Also, let's talk a little bit about September. What does September mean when it comes to fish behavior and fish patterns? September, to me, is the start of fall fishing. And listen, I don't care if you're in upstate New York or Florida. I don't care if you're in California or Ohio. When that first night or 2 of colder weather starts hitting, when that first week of temperature drop starts to happen, and it happens in September, that is the mark of fall fishing. That's the cue to the fish that the fall has begun. The days are getting a little shorter, the nights are getting a little cooler, and the water temperature is starting to drop down. Even if it's just a degree or 2, you're starting to see that slight drop in temperature. So to me, the month of September is what I call the early fall period, right? It's the fall transition when fish are moving from where they spent their summer, where they lived during the hottest part of the year. They begin moving toward where they're going to feed heavy in the fall. Okay, so it's early fall transition is a great way to explain it. One last thing before we get into this. The fish, the bass's feeding behavior really starts to kick into high gear with bait. Bait. In particular with bait. All right, listen to me. I'm not saying they're not going to eat a crawfish. I'm not saying that they're not going to eat a worm or a frog or a snake. Listen, if the opportunity is there, they're going to eat it. But as that early fall period starts to hit, a bass's mind really starts to shift into bait fish, specifically bait fish. And because of that, you're going to see that carry over into my top 4 lures for the month of September. All right, let's start with my 2 favorite for up north. And let me remind you that these also work down south. So if you're watching in the Carolinas, this will work there too. But my 2 top favorite of the 4, especially for north, happen to be the same bait. I don't think I ever did this in a top 4 before. Well, they're sort of the same bait, but they're both jerk baits. One is a hard jerk bait with treble hooks. One is a soft jerk bait. So let's take one at a time. For sure, when September hits, this lure is always tied on one of my rods, and it is a suspending jerk bait. Guys, this is that brand new Rapala Maverick, which is a pretty incredible long cast style suspending jerk bait. But if you look at this bait, it covers a lot of the bases for what I need when these fish start their fall transition, right? When fish are leaving their summer areas and starting to move to where they're gone in the fall, they're everywhere. They're moving. They're going from the deep main lake point. They're eventually going to be in the back of the pocket. They're transient. And because of that, I need a lure that can cover a lot of water. A jerk bait is it. Think about it, guys. I can fan cast this. I can fish it quick. I can make the fish show themselves. I can find the fish with the lure, right? So it covers a lot of water. Remember what I said about bait. Fish in September are really starting to change their feeding habits, oriented toward bait fish. So colors that have white and pearl and silver are great in this month of September, okay? So it could cover a lot of water, looks like a bait fish, elicits a reaction strike. So my number one bait in the fall, in the month of September, especially up north, is a hard jerk bait. All right, but here's the parlay, guys. You ready? But there are times in September when I can't fish a hard jerk bait, right? Think about the scenarios. A weedy flat that the weeds are grown an inch below the surface. Under docks, these fish that are moving and they're staging along docks, but they're way under the docks. Standing timber with a lot of branches, fish that are starting to feed on bait in standing timber. Hard to fish a jerkbait with all that wood. So in scenarios in September, when there's a lot of cover, too much cover for the Maverick, too much cover for treble hooks, guys, I just switched to a soft jerkbait, a Fluke style lure. This is one of my favorites. It's the Berkley Power Bait Power Jerk Shad. If you look at it, you know the deal with this one, guys. It's just a regular Fluke style lure, a minnow, soft minnow style lure. And this lure allows me to Texas rig this bait. And I love, love, love to use a 3 to 5/0. I really like the 4/0 heavy duty VMC offset hook. I like the heavy duty hook because it gives it a little more weight. And with this bait, I try to do the same exact thing I do with the hard jerk bait, which is make it look erratic, make it look like a bait fish fleeing, but I can do it in places I couldn't throw that hard jerk bait. So just like the hard one, I can cover tons of water. So following those fish that are moving from summer to fall in September, covering a lot of water is a must, guys. I can do that with this. I can also elicit a reaction strike. I twitch it erratically. It makes those fish bite. And last but not least, dude, it looks like a bait fish. Two of my favorite colors, pearl white, albino shad, looks like a bait fish. In September, they're eating bait fish. All right, number 2 was a soft jerk bait. All right, let's go to number 3 and 4, and now we're switching to baits that I really, really like in the southern part of the country. Virginia, draw a straight line across the whole country, Virginia south. These are some of the baits I really start producing for me in September. You knew I was going to say this one. Let's start with it. A crankbait. A crankbait. Think about what we just talked about. The ability to imitate a bait fish, the ability to cover a lot of water, and the ability to elicit a reaction strike. With the crankbait, we're going to do it through deflection. We're going to do it by causing this lure to hit off something. But this is a perfect September bait. It fills all those holes that we're talking about. The one thing that starts to happen in September with my crankbait fishing. Now listen, in June, July, especially July and August, those bass were deep. So when I'm cranking in July and August, I'm using DT14, DT16, DT20. I'm getting down in that, 14 to 20 plus zone. But September, remember, cooler nights, water temperatures cooling off. They start moving. When they move, they start to move shallower. And I like to go to shallower diving plugs. DT6, DT8, DT10, 6, 8, and 10, especially the 8 and the 10, really become my key players in the month of September. I'm covering a lot of water. Now I'm going down those points. I'm heading to the pockets. I'm heading in that direction. And I'm using the crankbait to help me find the fish, right? I'm still graphing and I'm still trying to target specific pieces of cover, but the crankbait is finding the fish for me. Color-wise, guys, you heard me mention it. In September, they start to shift to bait. So I get away from the crawfish colors. I get away from those colors that imitate other forage, and now I'm using the bait fish colors. Disco shad, blueback herring, penguin, some of my top colors in the crankbait in the month of September. All right, last but not least, number 4 for the month of September, especially in the South, especially we're talking Mason-Dixon line South, is a spinnerbait, a good old-fashioned spinnerbait. And listen, nothing against a chatterbait style lure, because chatterbait is still a great lure. But the spinnerbait, to me, really starts to trump the chatterbait in the month of September. When those fish start moving and those fish start really honing in on bait, I just think that does a better job of not only covering water, but imitating schools of bait fish. You know, if you look at the spinnerbait, guys, it's like the original Alabama rig. When you see those 2 willows, and this happens to be a Mullix, this is a Vetinator, this is in the 5/8 size, which is a little heavier than half. I love this size. And this is also a Heritage color series. Looks white, but it's got some metal flake in the blades. When you see that Mullix spinnerbait with that 4.5 and 3.5 willows in unison coming through the water, dude, it looks like a school little shad. It looks like a school little herring, little alewife, little minnows, right? Bait. The month of September, bait. But you have to have a lure that you can chunk and wind. We're not slowing down in September because the fish are transient. The fish are leaving the summer place. They're getting ready to head to the fall place. We got to cover water. The spinnerbait allows me to do that. 3 basic ways I fish this in the month of September. I'll burn it on the surface. The clearer the water, the faster I reel it. I'll fish it in the middle of the water column. A lot of times when the water's stained or the fish are suspended, I'll reel it in the middle, but I'll throw jerks into it. Every time I throw a jerk into the spinnerbait, those blades change and flash. And the last way I like to fish in September, especially if the fish are still deep but moving, is slow rolling. Let it sink to the bottom, click over, and just reel slow and let those blades flash and thump. But spinnerbait is a great September bait, especially in the fall. All right, guys, there you have it. My top 4 baits for the month of September: hard jerkbait, soft jerkbait, moving down south, crankbait, little shallower divers, shallow to medium divers in shad colors, and last but not least, the good old spinnerbait. Throw those lures, follow the fish. Remember, they're feeding on bait fish now. You do those things in September, you're going to catch more fish. Guys, I hope you like what you're watching. This is an In the Shop. If you're not subscribed, hit that button. It's right there. See it? Hit the button. Subscribe to the channel. When you do that, we're going to send you notifications on a new video dropping every single week. If you're already subscribed, tell your buddies. Next time you're at your club meeting, next time you're at the store, next time you're at your buddy's house, tell them about my channel, Mike Iaconelli Fishing on YouTube. We're here to help people learn more and hopefully become a better angler. Top 4 September baits, there you have it. Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli. I hope you enjoyed this week's In the Shop. I hope you learned a little bit. And if you like these videos, remember, there's a whole boatload. Check out these 2 and you're going to learn more about bass fishing.